Welcome to How Soccer Explains Leadership. As you know, if you have been listening to this show, I'm Phil Dark. I'm your host, and I'm again excited to share with you the guest that we have today. His name is Toriono Davis. He is a man with many things on his plate, and I am excited to share some of those things with you. He's also a good friend of mine, a guy who we've done some different things together. But before we get to that interview with Toriono, I do want to share with you just to make sure that you're going to be subscribing to this podcast. If it's something you haven't done already, subscribe to this show, because that way you won't miss any of our great episodes that we have. All these great people that we have on. I'm not just picking people randomly. I'm picking people that I know I'm learning from in my life, and I want you to be learning from in yours as well, and be able to help you to be a better leader on and off the pitch. And then also, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and rate and review the show wherever you're listening to it. You can go ahead and that rate and review buttons and do that. It helps it get out to a lot more people out there. And then for your sake, join the Facebook group so you can continue this conversation beyond the podcast, and something that we're growing that. And as we grow it bigger and bigger, we're going to be able to have better and better conversations. So go to Facebook and join that group if you haven't done so already. So without more on that, today we have, like I said, Toriono Davis. Toriono, how you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing great, Phil, and thank you for having me on. And I can't stress enough the podcast. Some great stuff. I've already shown it to some of my guys. In fact, my son, who's over in England doing trials with soccer, it's been great. And the number one thing that the different coaches and mentors, agents, players, whatnot, from different levels have said they've really appreciated the leadership and some of the things he gathered from the podcast. And I would, anybody up and coming, video analysis, recruiter, coach, investor, whatever you are, player, please take advantage of the mentorship and little life lessons that people are dropping on this that took them decades to learn, really can advance you forward. So, which is something that in our industry people are looking for, because it's results oriented. And if it takes you 20 years to get a 30-second result, I think you're going to have maybe a short-lived, as fruitful as it could be, experience at the higher level anyways.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that a lot, to learn what we can, to have that humble posture, that learning posture, to be able to learn from others who have been there before us. And that's, hope to get people on to be able to do that, and ourselves be able to share what we've learned. So hopefully people coming behind us are able to benefit like we've benefited from others who are just got some great wisdom to share with us. So, those of you who aren't watching on video, you're not seeing the Dortmund jersey that Toriono is sporting, because he does have connections all over Europe. I'm going to let him share with us his bio, and anything he might forget, I might remind him of, as I've done in the past with some of our other guests. But Toriono, can you just briefly share your story, how you got to be where you are today? I know you've had some stints playing some professional soccer, have some, involvement with the military, some other things that are just some really cool stuff that really has taught you and brought you to where you are today. So can you share that with the folks listening in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Well, so I grew up Cleveland, Ohio. So it's interesting, this particular story, because just getting out of that city, I was fortunate through a lot of different mentorship and things like that. And basically, for me, soccer was a vehicle. There's only a couple ways you can get out: sports, maybe your brain, military, maybe you can get a job. But so for me, I didn't care what it was. I wasn't the smartest, I wasn't the fastest athlete either, nothing like that. But I said, you know what, if I could find a niche and someone that's willing to mentor me and work with me, and be patient, that's how I came about. So for me, the nice thing about it is I was raised by my grandfather and grandmother. I actually knew my great grandmother, which was nice. So aunts and uncles, great aunts and uncles. It was an interesting area in Cleveland, ranging from your suburban, normal issues and experiences, positive and negative, to at that time crack cocaine and mafia wars and all kind of other criminal wars and other things that a large city like that, the Cleveland being little Detroit, can bring. The parents have a strong entrepreneurial background, grandparents and whatnot. Family ran multiple businesses, so had to become independent rapidly. And that was nice, because I loved that Now I switched from American football while I was a wide receiver, a punter, cornerback. The soccer team actually recruited me my junior year towards the middle of the junior year. Now, as I said before, I just wanted to get out of Cleveland vehicle. I was like, okay. I was like, I don't know nothing about no soccer. I was like, I don't even like soccer. It's stupid. And, I mean, I didn't, typical. I was like, I didn't know. Okay, that looks cool. You kick a ball. Yeah, I was like, man, we beat you guys up. I don't play this stupid. I'm like, why are you even talking to me? But here's what was so funny. I developed a love for the game. These guys, they mentored me, took me under their wing. I was lifeguarding at the time, and it was crazy because the guy at University of Cincinnati, he was ranked fifth, Cincinnati Division I college. He's ranked fifth in the nation. He's mentored by Joe Macknick and Brad Friedel, and you see Dr. Joe on Fox Sports all the time. Greg Andrulis, he coached Columbus Crew, and Brad Friedel, Franz Hook. I mean, these, the Netherlands, I mean, just these legends, he coached at, maybe a couple of names, Manchester United, Bayern Munich. I mean, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, he would kill me for that one. Barcelona. But so it's just, what was nice was I got to the point where those folks taught me, and I got to the point where I saw the Cleveland Force, which ironically, I'm in Annapolis, Maryland now. I see the Baltimore Blast, but watching Kyle Hoskevy, this Iceland guy, right, and watching them how they moved and just how they did it, and it cracks me up because people talk about attendance. I remember being at indoor soccer games where there was 50,000 people. And I mean, in Cleveland, like who, I mean, not even Cleveland. You're more talking about they're in Richfield Coliseum, so that's more close to Akron, and it snows there. Most people don't travel, in those type of numbers in the snow, even for a hockey game. And folks come out, and then I've been blessed enough where learned the sport enough to the point where I've been recognized by a lot of different individuals. And I've been helping those clients through consultants or coaching or whatnot, where I'm even able to help folks you see on TV that play in Europe, and even on a Saturday or Sunday. So that's my situation there.
Absolutely. And you kind of left out a little bit as far as you're also scouting some players, right? You're acting as a scout, helping young players
Yes.
get connected with maybe a right fit for them. You also spent some time in South America playing, right? Am I
Yes.
correct there?
Yes.
Share a
Yes.
bit about
No. He's right on it. So I was fortunate to have some time in the military with the Marines. And, and I think they were more being nice, but I became a pretty good goalie. But the thing was so they got a chance to be in some of the reserves and that type of setup in South America. And it was fun because seeing that game and watching them play just in the street, watching them play, what we call futsal now, but they were on a basketball court. And I'm like, what in the world? Because I'm, for me, I'm sitting for like, wait a minute, you guys are playing on concrete? I said, oh, this I know. I mean, because basketball, football, street. And I'm like, wait a minute, no one, and I should have said that. No one told me this stuff. I cussed out the soccer team after they came to me because I said, look, if y'all would have told me about this goalkeeping thing, I'm like, I can punt, catch. I was having fun. I said, I'm up here doing 3-a-days and pads. All I need is gloves. I was still wearing the football girdle because it was padding, but it was. I loved it so much. It got to the point where now people started coming to me, and it was nice because like in the Marines, there was only 2 people speaking English. I was one of them. Now, they could speak English obviously, but it was great being around 25 different styles on the same pitch. And that's what I love with this game is that it's such a liberating factor to the point where I'm fortunate enough now where I'm actually helping people, whether they want to get to college, high school, recreational, transition. If they're at the elite level, I can give them the pro, Europe and whatnot, different levels. So yeah, my organization, we help people transition to modern game. We also help them with the social psychology aspect. So yeah, and then we'll make sure that, I can do it now. If you want to reach me for those different things, my website is http // fc-omega.com, or you can call the office number at 866-234-9864, 866-234-9864, or Phil can send the information. But thank you. Yeah, that was amazing experience to the point where now we're able to help those big clients, small clients, consultant, whatever. And I've been able to actually make a living from something I love and help the people that I have relationships with, which is, I never would have thought. I never would have thought. So
absolutely. Yeah, and I think you said one of the things you said is really what we're going to be focusing on today for this episode. Really is the the sports psychology side of it, right?
Yeah.
The the thing that we
Yes.
met doing, right, was training for DISC, model of human behavior. And I want to
Yes.
talk with you about that today. A few people have, talked about this. In fact, a few episodes ago, my co-host asked me
Mhm.
to give a brief explanation of the differences between all the different personality assessments and, type, the different Enneagram and DISC and
Sure.
Myers-Briggs and
Sure.
so on and so forth. And as he said in that, I've been certified in the DISC. He called me an expert in the DISC, and I hesitate to say I'm an expert in anything, because that to me says a whole lot more than we want to. But you and I both have been
Right.
up in it. We know a lot more than most people do about DISC, and so I wanted to bring you on because you're one of the guys that I know that knows the DISC, model of human behavior, and the game of football slash soccer, depending on where you are. And you're
Mhm.
also a guy who's been involved in, like you said, the military. You're running your own company now. You see leadership on different levels, both in the game and
Yes.
outside the game. So I wanted to talk with you about, really start off by kind of just explaining what DISC is. But as we go on in this
Sure.
episode, we'll talk more. It'll be a really good conversation, hopefully, about what the DISC is, how you're using it in the soccer clubs and programs that
Mhm.
you're working with, and why it is critical in
Mhm.
leadership. So let's start with that, what
Yeah.
DISC is. And just for our
Sure.
people out there, can you just give, and I've given a little snippet in the past, but, a lot of people probably haven't heard that episode. And also, I want to hear your take on it
Yeah.
as far as how you explain to people what DISC is and why it's important to them.
Yes, no, no, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, and Phil's being modest. He truly is one of the upper caliber of folks that understand and can apply it, and I've appreciated that, because if you think about it, here's what I love with DISC. DISC is an area that if you're having issues with, struggling with understanding yourself, confidence, if you're trying to just get the most out of relationships, if you're trying to figure out how to, get the results, have fun, support other people, figure out the best practices, and understand why, like, maybe you don't click with someone else, or or just wondered why, hey, why did different things, not quite work out. When I was a boss, why did it not work out? Like, why did I not mesh with the people? Let's say I was a person, I was the best employee, but all of a sudden I became a supervisor, and now everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. What in the world? Or I was great at the military, and I applied those techniques and principles to my family, and my wife's ready to divorce me, and kids won't talk to me. What's going on? Or maybe I'm a coach, and I was an amazing player, but you know what? The team doesn't follow me. They don't listen
Yeah.
to me. And I think maybe that's why I was drawn to goalkeeping, because the leadership, it just drew to me, where it's just you. You can't hide. You make a mistake, it's in the net. But what I like with the DISC is this. The DISC is a personality assessments. It basically helps you in a positive way, help you understand yourself and others. Myers-Briggs, I've got nothing against them, but that's a little corporate. It can be pricey. And you might need a PhD to understand what, Freud and all these other folks. What I like with DISC is we use it in the military, and that's actually my first exposure, and then seeing, Dr. Rome there. There's different versions, but we work with personality insights, and it's amazing. Dr. Rome, what I love, what he did is, back in 1994, he said, look, here's what we've got. There's outgoing, reserve, there's task and people. But what I loved about it was, he said, look, don't weaponize this, because I always had a question. I had different friends in special forces. I was like, look, and then when I worked with those guys, I said, hey, but you've got it where, it's fascinating with the military and sports too, but you've got it where you've got this surfer, long haired hippie. He's doing the same thing as the jock athlete, who's doing the same thing as the corporate, fraternity kid that's been raised by his dad. Well, how did that person become the Force Recon, Marine, Green Beret, Navy SEAL? Like, how does that work? Because are you telling me that anybody can do a job? Is it because I was always fascinated with those type of questions, where I said, but wait a minute, this person here is an introvert, How are they able to be the best salesperson out there, the best recruiter or whatnot? And what DISC has taught me is this, and now sometimes we'll get flack on this, but the best way I can explain is this. There isn't a introvert per se, because if you were a true introvert, when I talk to different social psychologists, when I talk to different clinical psychologists and therapists, they're like, look, if you're a true introvert, you don't leave the cave. You're you don't interact with society. You don't go outside you do not talk. If I talk to you, it's not like a panic wherever you don't interact. There's no interaction. So it's more what I like with the DISC model is, it says, wait, you're reserved and you can flex your personality. A lot of people have struggled with that, because think about it. How many times we went with a player and we say, be more vocal, be more vocal, be more, and we're get fired up, and they're like, either they're running away, or or they're like, I didn't quite like that, or maybe they're good actors. But what I like about it is that when I work with a goalie, for example, or a striker, and I've got to help them be more vocal, I say, well, look, one, we'll practice it, but number two, just because you're reserved doesn't mean you can't do this job, and you have to not have confidence. Speaking is not a natural thing. A lot of people have a fear of it, but here's how we can work through this challenge and make you better. So to bring it home, helping somebody who was reserved, or they think it is an introvert and they think that it's a curse, we can say, no, you absolutely can be good at sales. You absolutely can be good as a captain in this playing role you have. But here's the adjustments we need you to understand and make. We need you to understand that this person that you're interacting with, they need your message to be a little more vocal, a little bit louder. Here's some steps you can take. And what's nice about it is this: understand that when you make your adjustment by understanding yourself, and then you understand what somebody else needs, you're not trying to change them. And then now you can make adjustments of yourself without changing yourself. You're still internally good, but now here's what it becomes. Okay, I can be vocal, I can be boisterous, I can be whatever I need, like a drama, an actor on a stage for 90 minutes.
Mhm.
Now, the difference is, if that's not your natural personality style, you will be drained and you will have to recharge.
Yeah.
So what I love with that is that the disc just shows you very quickly how to talk with the different personalities, and you can make adjustments. And what I've noticed is it really helps me just really go and speak to the needs of that person and keep them energized and confident as a player and individual, and then help them get to where they need to be. So this, to me, is the best. It's the best for chemistry. We do an assessment virtual, and then we have a little team talk. We do a individual, and then we do a collective as a group. So we do the one-on-ones, and then we do collective, and then we also add a leadership aspect where I talk even with the parents, the team manager, if you will, or whatnot. And what that player, most players have said to me, we really appreciate what you're doing, is because we feel like you're talking to us, we feel like you understand, and then it also helps us manage the team better by putting people in the right positions based on their personality traits and interests, things like that. So that's kind of how I've applied it. That's kind of how I view it, and then just adding to what has already been said in the previous podcast.
Yeah, and I just want to take a step back real quick. All that
Yeah.
is absolutely dead on as far as the application of it, the importance of it, the fact that, we too often will type people and put them into a box rather than,
Yeah.
as we learned it, everyone is a blend of all four personality types, the DISC
Correct.
in the disc. We're a blend of all four of those. And,
Hmm.
Myers-Briggs, as you said, often does that via percentages, right? I'm a
Right.
93%
Right.
extrovert.
And
It's
caloric.
not just a
Yeah.
random number. I'm actually 93% extrovert. But when you look at the disc, it definitely is correlated. But the problem is, what does 93% extrovert mean? And what is all these other letters? There's, 8 letters in the Myers-Briggs, and you have all these blends, and
Hmm.
it's just, the disc is
Hmm.
simpler. Again, not to say Myers-Briggs is not great. It's a great tool if you actually understand it. But
Sure.
like you said, you kind of needed the
Right.
decoder ring and a PhD to really, really, really understand it. Now, disc, you can now, in
Yeah.
all fairness, you can go super deep into the disc too, right? I mean, you
Oh,
can
absolutely.
super deep, but you don't need to, right? I mean, as we learned it,
Hmm.
I'm just going to quiz you here, Toriono. So don't fail me,
Yes.
man. Don't fail me, dude.
He's got the cue cards. Don't worry.
So, so you talked about it really quickly. But I want to walk through it for people who don't know it. For people who this is their
Sure.
first primer on, or primer, depending on who you talk to, on the disc. So we have outgoing and reserved are the top quadrant and the bottom quadrant of the circle, right? So what did we really call that? What do you liken that to with regards to?
Well, I've seen introvert and extrovert is what I've commonly, you hear. And it's ironic because when you say that, look, I've got a daughter now. She's very outgoing, but you know what? Put her in front of a podcast or on stage. Now you have the other daughter. She has the same personality blend, but you can't get her off the stage, and they'll probably be on a future podcast, with like children in leadership. And it's funny, especially with this, but it's interesting that these kids came from the same woman, and it's like, well, why does one person, they're so outgoing, with their friends, but you put them on the stage in front of the class or whatnot, and they just whoop, and they're hiding behind the desk. Well, if you're a true extrovert, you're not hiding. You're picking up the desk and look at me, but so there's that blend, and it's interesting how people are individually, and then how they are in their environment, as
Right.
opposed to what they are at the core. So
Yeah, no, for sure. And kind of what I was getting at, and it's kind of unfair because you didn't really know what I was getting at. So let's go back to, so we learned it really as the outgoing and reserved are really your motor, right? You remember that?
yes,
So talk
yes,
about that a little bit as far as, and this has really made sense to me. So you have the outgoing, and we likened them to different cars, if you remember correctly. And
hmm
the outgoing would be likened to, do you remember what kind of car
yeah,
the?
faster pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like the Maserati or the Ferrari, kind of fast, whereas the other one is more of a reserved, slower, not, I don't know, Honda or Fiat or something like that, but it's a slower gear. It's not just, one person is up and they're moving,
Yeah.
back and forth, and we're to the point where they actually drain the other person. The other person is trying to get a cup of coffee, and
Yep, for
the
sure.
other motor's already gone.
That's right. My wife, she in the morning when I get up,
Yeah,
as a very outgoing kind of that sports car, as you talked about it, right? I always kind of
right,
talk about it as the sports car versus the smart car. And you have
right.
a sports car for 0 to 60, no problem. You're just going, you
Yeah,
go all day. At the end of the day, your battery's actually charged more than it was at the beginning of the day when you
yes,
started up the
yes,
car. And you could go, if you were people all day, you could keep going, and you're just fired up and jazzed, and you could keep going for another
yes,
12 hours with people, right? But versus that smart car,
right.
which is more of the reserved, where you have the, you're going and you go and you go and you can get to 65
Yep,
without straining your gas, right?
yep,
But when you get home at
yes. I
night
need to warm up.
with people and driving, what do you got to do? You got to plug
Yeah,
the sucker
recharge.
in, right? You know,
That's
you don't want people talking with you.
right.
Like, I've already dealt with my
That's right.
time. So, and this is what's great. You and I both know when we're training people on this, when they see that and they're just like, oh, okay, now it
Yes,
makes sense.
yes.
Right. So,
Right. Well,
um,
think about with soccer. Isn't it amazing when you've got done with a big event, right? And now you have the team dinner. And how many times have people yelled at Jenny or John because they're like, "Well, you're not a team player. What do you mean you don't want to interact with the
right.
what you call it? What do you mean you don't want to sit down with the and or they have to go and they're like, oh, and they're trying to. It's amazing where it's like, well, wait a minute. If you say, hey, you're going to have some time to yourself. We'll build that in, but we do want to have that collective experience. So, hey, during this hours, we'd like to do this. Here's the structure, and they're more amiable to that.
Yep. Yep. Or or awards banquets or stuff, right? Like, some people want to be up on
Yes.
stage and they want to get on a mic and give a speech about how great they were and how great the team was and how great this and that and the other thing. And they want you to throw all the accolades on them. And then other kids, like my son, would rather have you just give him the award off the stage and
Yep.
just say, hey, great job, man. You did awesome. You had a great season because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Talk to certain
Right.
personalities and they're like, you don't have to tell me all why I did great. Just tell me I did great and give me the award. That's fantastic. I love it.
That's all I need.
And then other people, they need you to tell you why I talk to my son the same thing, the same son. And I say, if I just told you great job, would that mean much to you? He's like, no. You need to tell me
Yep.
why I did a great job, or else it doesn't mean a whole lot. And again, when you
Yep.
understand personalities, all that comes together and makes sense. And it's really important to know those different ones. So we talked about that outgoing, reserved, right? So that's the first question you ask to
Hmm.
really kind of get an idea. And that's the pace, right? And so
Yes.
as we talk about, not many accidents are caused by the speed of the cars on the freeway, right? You don't see
Right.
that. Usually adjust to outgoing or reserved. But the other one, the
Hmm.
task focused or people focused, that's the one that usually causes the accidents, which is why they call it the compass, right? And so can you just share a
Yeah,
little
the
bit about
compass.
the task versus the people focus there and the differences there and why it does usually
Yes.
cause a lot of accidents?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I will tell you. So I'll mention the two individuals again. So if you ask one, of my daughters, if you ask one of them to say, "Hey, what you said hurt my feelings," they say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. I apologize." You ask the other one to say, "Well, toughen up." And it's like, what? There is. So it's interesting where, so I'm teaching one sympathy and I'm teaching the other one empathy. I can say, well, you can think toughen up, but you say, well, we understand you burnt your hand when you touched the stove. Maybe you should think about not touching items that are hot instead of, well, I was stupid. What'd you do that for? So it's not that she's not caring, not that they don't have feelings, but it's amazing how a person that is people oriented, they really are in tune with with sympathy. They understand different things that might be said or perceived, and they're amazing at this. Where it really can help with harmony and different items like that. Being her really a true friend. Whereas task, that person, they're going to be able to energize things in such a manner where results are going to happen. Now, there may be a pile of bodies at the end of the exercise, but they will get things done. So what that task person has to understand is that sometimes, a good morning, hello, proper greeting of the day, a taking 5 seconds to listen, and then going into the checklist of items we need to do is very effective for the individual that is very focused on people. And what the people person may need to understand is that when they're talking with a person that values tasks, if they're in a position of leadership or whatever, where they're doing a collaboration, they need to give that agenda, get to the result. That person doesn't really care about the weather, the day. They're like, no, give me this stuff. Let's get this done. Can you get out of my way now? So so not have your feelings hurt if. But yeah, it's amazing how those two clash because they can be blind spots for each other
Yep. No, for sure. And I think it's something that we see that all the time. I mean, you see task focused
all the time.
and people focused people, and they usually misinterpret each other's behaviors and actions. And
Yes.
that's usually what happens when it causes the conflict. And so, we
Yes.
often will talk about these different personality types as different languages, right? Where
Hmm.
you are fluent in I, of the DISC. I'm fluent in I, and you're fluent in I because we both have I above
Hmm.
midline of the assessment. So
Hmm.
we pretty much click. We can talk, we can do it, even though you're a DI and I'm an ID, but we're fluent in each other's languages, primary language
Right.
or secondary languages, or the other one's primary. But if we
Hmm.
come up with a C or an S who's that's their primary, we need to either learn that language, which we know a little bit
Yes.
of. We can dabble in it. We can go
Right.
ask to go to the bathroom or ask for some chicken or something.
Right.
But we're not gonna, go into a conference and really being able to understand all the different words. We don't know, we're not fluent in
Yeah.
it, right? And so
Right.
it's so important, as you just talked about there, to understand, first of all, that you are a blend of all four, but also
Hmm.
that you need to learn that language if you're actually going to be able to connect with them at the level you need to connect with them. So now let's say,
Right.
okay, now let's take it to the game of soccer. As you
Hmm.
say, okay, again, that was a crash course. Just so you folks know, if you're lost right now, I apologize. But at the same time, I'm going to tell you right now that this will take a couple hours of training to really get it. and start applying it. And then it takes a bit more coaching beyond that. If you really want to get it, it's going to be a half day, but then beyond that, it's going to take some coaching in your particular contexts. But hopefully today we can get you enough idea and whet your appetite a little bit to understand, really, like we talked about earlier, why it's important. And I think you get it intuitively
Hmm.
why it's important just by, if you have
Oh
kids,
yeah.
if you coach a team, if and the funny thing is though, here's the real funny thing. If you're sitting out there and you're going, no, I don't need it. I don't really, this isn't really important to me. I would put a lot of money on the fact that you're a task focused person. And
Hmm.
because typically the task focused people don't think that this stuff is that important. The people focused people will be like, yes, let's
Right.
do it. We need to do it. We need to do it. Fact of the matter of it, all of us need it. And if you're healthy, you'll understand that and you'll recognize it. Because even if you think you're very extremely self-aware yourself and you know yourself, you need to understand others to really be able to communicate with them. So, okay. So with that,
Hmm.
I want to go back to you and go, okay, I know you use this in the context of clinics that you
Oh
do,
yeah.
teams, in the context with
Absolutely.
coaching you do of clubs. So what does
Hmm.
it look like in the context of that coaching, in that training? What is the disc?
Sure.
How are you able to use it in the context of your coaching of these other organizations? And then we'll have a little bit of fun
Yeah.
about that
Yeah.
question.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, no. Well, so here's what's nice. So to maximize the results, you got to understand somebody very quickly. Because if you think about it, if you believe you don't need some type of methodology or whatnot, here's what my European clients would tell you. One, they would tell you you're a fool. They would just flat out. They would just. And I'm talking about like top five leagues, top two divisions in the league. So there's a reason why Atletico, Sevilla, all these different teams were able to challenge if we take La Liga, and it's not just a two-horse race anymore. Now it's getting a little bit more exciting because now you got four teams, sometimes five, where they can come back. You look at Milan now. It's amazing how they can come back, and you look at Inter. Oh man, what happened? But it's like, okay, well, how did they do that? How did they catch up to a Juventus and whatnot? Well, here's what you have to do. You have to understand that one, especially in America, it is absurd where the level of understanding is at. It is, and that needs to change because we're doing our kids, we're doing the parents, and we're doing a lot of folks a disservice. I can't tell you how many times Phil and I, or me with other high level folks, USSF, whoever, UEFA, and they look and they watch a coaching session and a clinic, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what in the world? What that was garbage. Who is that clown?" Or I'd get in a client, and I've been able to have a breakthrough in goalkeeping or whatever the field player clinic in a matter of minutes, that parents that are coming to me where they're like, man, we were with this high profile so and so, this that, for years, and you've been able to break it down simple, and just the kid is shining, their presence is coming out, they're loving it. What in the world? How did you do that? And I tell them, well, one, disc. And they said, well, what is that? I said, I'm glad you asked. I said, so look, here's what I want you to do. Your child, here is the blend of your child. I would like to do an assessment with your child, but based on what I see, here are some things that I believe that you're going to love. If you would, allow me to, I would like to do a virtual assessment on them. And here's what that's going to do for you. One, it's going to help you understand where they're coming from, needs, behaviors, different things like that. But it's really going to maximize your communication with them. And when you tell them to do something or just want to understand how to connect with them and really hear it from their point of view or whatnot, that's really going to help. I've noticed that's been very important to a lot of families because there's a lot of parents come to me and say, they won't listen to me, but they'll listen to you. Now, that's a whole different leadership topic there where it's like,
Right.
they won't listen to their parents. Okay. And what makes you think they're going to listen to the coach? Okay. Well, all right. Well, got it. I don't understand that, but okay. This will help that. And we can have a guided discussion or whatnot. But so what I do is I give them the assessment. And for the kids, sometimes I don't even give them a choice. Sometimes I'll say, hey, look, this is going to help maximize you. This is going to help me talk to you as I'm mentoring you. Let's just make it a mandate because I want to maximize this for you and plus you're going to need it for your middle school, high school, college. different level. You know what? Let's. I want you to have this. So here's the cost. Boom. Let's get it done. It take you about 5-10 minutes, whatever, 20 minutes if you have multiple questions, and most of them, 80 to 90% do it.
Yeah.
Now, what I also do is I take that and I also do it for teams. So when I have the camps and clinics, what I want to do it is for two reasons. One, I want to get the best out of the player, but I want that player to understand themselves. If they don't understand themselves, there's going to be a lot of mental blocks to getting them to the performance level I need them to be. If they can get a basic understanding of themselves, that kind of removes a distraction, a fog, if you will. Now, besides that, I also want to kind of see the team dynamic, because in the clinic, you can't do it all the time, but if you can, it's so much easier if you're talking to people in the language they understand to get them to where you need to be, because now you can adjust it. You can say, hey guys, now look, we're going to go ahead and there's a progression type of drill. Here's the demo. Here's that. But what you're doing is now you're meeting the people that want to understand. Hey, I want to get to the results and get at it. Hey, I want to have some fun. Hey, I want to understand the best practices. Hey, you know what? I'm here. I just want to be able to support, folks. And I really want to be able to understand and better myself, but really be there for my teammates. So you're able to get that and get the biggest impact. So that's what I do. I kind of mandate it because I want them to understand that from a communicative perspective, especially if we're doing virtual learning, this is huge, because if I can't, see your voice cues, see your body language, hear your voice cues and interpret them properly, see your body language. If we're doing virtually, which we have a large virtual business, you need something to offset those misunderstandings, those miscommunications, so that's what I like about DISC, and that's how I apply it. And then sometimes we will take that particular individual training and mini group dynamic. And then what I'll do is I'll talk to the leadership, the chairman, the vice chairman, the sporting director of those European clubs and other clubs, and say, hey, look, have you tried this? Have you thought about this? Because you've invested a lot of money in this individual, and they have a sprained ankle, or you're wondering why. Here's the pressure. Maybe maybe it is homesickness, whatnot. But this can kind of help you retain assurance policy, if you will. And it'll also make your social psychologist life a little bit easier too. So that's kind of a local dynamic all the way up to corporate, which we do layers. We kind of operate in the tactical, operational, strategic, all the way at the same time. So.
Yeah. And you hit on something there that I've talked about. That's why we do this show, actually, to say it's not just the helping that player on the field, right? I mean, talking to the parents to say, your son, your daughter, they understand themselves. That's the first step of DISC, right?
Yep.
Then they're also able to understand others. And oh, by the way, parents, you'll understand your child better. If you also take the assessments, your child will understand you better. And the child will understand you better even if you don't take the assessments, because the child will be able to ask those two questions we asked earlier: outgoing, reserved, task focused, people focused, and understand their parents better. So I know we did this in my house, and I've already said this on the show, I believe. I do a lot of podcasts, so I may have said it on a different podcast. But I had, my favorite Christmas presents my kids ever had, not really, but I gave them for Christmas one year the DISC assessment. And I said, we're going to do this as a family, and you guys aren't going to appreciate this year when you're 9 to, or actually it's probably 6 to 6 to 6. You will. Down the road, you will appreciate this, and you will see how this helps you in soccer, in our home, in your school, in wherever you go, in business, in your jobs. You're going to be able to understand your bosses better. And hopefully, if you can help them understand it, they can understand you better as well. And then you guys can get the best out of each other and help each other to flourish. And if you don't really understand other people, it's really hard to create a flourishing environment where they can flourish.
Yeah.
Right. And so you hit it on the head there, where you said, okay, individuals do it. I did it with my high school team that I coach. We had everyone take the assessment, including the coaching staff. We were able to do a training with the team so they understood it. And I love, and you probably see this too, I've seen, tough high school athletes crying because they actually realize, oh, I'm not you fill in the blank. I'm actually a different person.
Misunderstood.
and that's okay.
Yeah. I, and I tell you, I'm so glad you said that, Phil, because one aspect of what we do, and I'm so glad for this particular assessments tools, because so I work also with a lot of disenfranchised folks too, whether it's in Cameroon, Nigeria, or Baltimore, DC, Philly, and what's so nice about it is, Brooklyn, wherever. What's so nice about it is this: kids today, they have, I mean, social media has almost made it worse, where it is one, they're almost not untethered to that high school juvenile experience, so they can't recharge. Two, they're being evaluated based off of this mythical, final take. So now if they don't understand themselves, and then they're trying to live up to this. You've got all this angst and all this other energy, and if you think that player is doing amazing on your team with all of that pressure, it was hard before.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that, you know what, the disc will help you remove a lot of those distractions and layers so you can have the conversation to get the best out of that player. But where it's helped me is that when I'm dealing with folks that are trying to just get off the street, that are trying to figure it out. I mean, home life is a wreck, I mean, like prostitution, all kind of craziness, that's just out there. It's always been out there. But watching that kid have to deal with that, and school, and just trying to, play a sport, it breaks your heart. But what I love with this tool is that, especially at-risk kids, we've had a fantastic partnership with the Department of Justice and a lot of nonprofits where it's especially for the young men and even young women, where they finally were able to figure out that they're okay. They finally figured out, like, wait a minute, okay, I have some challenges, but I understand. Okay, I can make sense of my world. And I tell you, that's been the biggest blessing, if you will, because not only am I able to take care of my players, but let's say a lot of the Salvadorians I work with in this region, I'm able to help their mom have a better relationship with that kid and keep them off MS-13 and then 18th street gangs, help them to the point where even if they become a better citizen, I've had a great success rate with helping folks not even get deported, because we can say, look how this kid is not going that path. Look how this kid is trying to do this, trying to do that, and talking to the authorities in such a manner where they're like, you know what? You just defined leadership. You just defined, okay, it isn't just a good kid. Oh, I can see what they're trying to do, but helping them understand themselves and having that confidence, that's big, because these athletes now, they have so much accessibility to all the craziness on the internet. They have so much accessibility to drugs, everything that does not help them in their career. The disc helps them build a foundation between you and them very rapidly, to the point where they say, you know what, I'm understanding myself. I understand it's a journey, got it. But I'm understanding myself. I'm not just looking at horoscopes, Cosmopolitan or People. Not that those are bad, but I understand myself. I'm understanding others a little bit better. I can make better, more defined choices. And then now I understand how adjustments I may need to make to be a better friend or to keep myself out of that situation, peer pressure that may hurt me physically, mentally, or whatever, or, may put me in jail, because you and I both know, look, there's so much talent out there, but most of the talent is either in the graveyard or in the penitentiary.
Yep.
The people we see on the TV are just people that, they got through, but
Really?
they're not necessarily the most talented or effective people in the game today.
That's right. Okay, now we're gonna have a little bit of fun. Not that we haven't already. I've
Yeah.
had a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
don't, but we talked about this. I think it was at the food court during one of the breaks that we had at the
Oh
train.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
talked about
Phil
this.
fed me. It was good.
The calls from like Chelsea, guys and Liverpool guys and all these other people you were talking. Either that or you're faking it just to impress me. I don't know, one of the two.
That's
But we talked about, okay, are there certain positions that certain personality types, positions on the football pitch, that certain personality types would do better in that position, and maybe do worse in
Yeah.
that position if they were a certain personality type? So I'm just going to throw out to
Right.
you, and I say this, we're having fun on this, but I'm talking coaches. If you're listening
Hmm.
to this right now,
But it's serious.
you may
Yeah. Get
want
this one right.
assessments to your recruits. Like you can't make them do it, I think. But if you gave assessments to your recruits, maybe you could say, hey, if you could do this, if you're serious, and their parents would get a bonus out of it to understand their kid better. But if you're looking at a striker, what kind of personality type would you be looking for, Toriano?
Well, see, so here, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. Now, remember, as I said before, going back to the special forces model or the elite military, no elite unit believes in that. If they did, think about it. How many special forces would there be? If you had to be a specific personality type, even in corporations, I've had some of the most intense discussions helping corporate leaders understand that, look, you don't know your people. Now, just because Jane is a reserved person that loves people doesn't mean she can't get in there and knock somebody out, and be the best salesperson.
Absolutely.
And then because people miss that, and then but it doesn't mean that your most aggressive person is the best person for that position. So like from that aspect, but let's take soccer. So the first thing is, it doesn't matter, like when we're talking about the 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 correct person for that position, that means nothing. What we're looking at is, what is the results. So the thing is this: the first thing, the methodology has to happen, and even where I help the Europeans with, and we talk, because they're like, hey, I have a person, how do I get my best out of them? They're my striker, but they're not getting it done. And the first thing I tell them is, okay, well, who's mentoring them? And they give me this dumb look, and I'm like, okay, so you're in the Premier League hierarchy. You're in the top four divisions, and I'm mentoring your goalkeeper. And it's not that he's not a leader. It's just you have him. You have it all wrong. You have him. Look, here is his disc profile. Here's how you need to talk to him. Here's how you need to adjust your video analysis. And here's who you need to mentor him by. Because I said, let's take a jot down memory lane. Everybody knows Neymar. Well, okay. Well, who mentored Neymar? Lionel Messi. Most half the people I know don't even know that. And then I said, okay. Well, then who mentored Lionel Messi? Now you get a real dumb stare. I said, have you heard of Ronaldinho? No. And at that point, I'm ready to throw the chair at him or something. But I said, look, it is about who mentors you, because your ability to learn is more important, and players learn from players. People forget that Thierry Henry was the one Ibrahimovic was the one who squared Thierry Henry away. With all that talent and understanding, it means nothing, because when you're forced to be faced yourself and an obstacle and you're not doing well, that's when they send the social psychologist in. What the problem is this: that social psychologist there, he works for the team. She works for the team. They have 150 different people on their plate. They're like a social worker. They're not going to help you. They give you a quick little what you call it, But so you need your own system. You need your own whatnot. And that's what's so nice with this. I have Premier League and all kind of other folks. They still work with me now because they're like, look, I need my own physical trainer. I need my own health trainer. And so here's what you need. You need to create the environment where it doesn't matter their personality. It matters, do they get at the problem? A striker, regardless of their personality, just has to love going after that ball. They got to be like if you had a dog and you threw the ball, all they're doing is just chasing it. And I think there was one Dr. Doolittle ball, a movie where he's like, give me the ball. He's jumping up, give me the ball, give me. Well, the striker has to be like that. They have to be like, they're running, whether they get the ball, they're running, whether they don't have the ball, they're there, and they want it more than everybody else. That's why the 1v1s, 2v1s, 3v1s, because in the game of soccer, you and I both know, I don't care if you have Lionel Messi. The game is 11v11. I do not care if you have Lionel Messi. Now, he may rip us to shreds, but we should be able to isolate one player. Because we know the game is 11v11, and then it's broken down into 1v1s, and you're trying to create the overload with 1v1s, 2v1s out. That's what you're trying to do. Now, the issue is this: when you're going back to that player, if you understand how to talk to them, and that's what I love with this. Let's say that person, for whatever reason, they have a mental block. Well, you've got to understand how human behavior works. Like I love what Tony Robbins said. He said, look, first off, they got to have hunger. And that's why I said, whatever the position is, the aggressiveness, whatever, they've got to have the hunger. They got to have the, I'm going to look at videos. I can't tell you how many kids I'm working with. They want to be amazing. They don't even watch the dang game on TV. I'm like, you're an idiot.
Yep.
Mentorship. Oh, I'm going to do this, this, and that. And I'm like, well, first off, you know, who are you mentored by? You're mentored by clowns, and your cousin's an idiot. So if you're mentored by them, you're not going to make it. So you got to have the hunger. You also have massive action. So the hunger and massive action, and then what will happen is now, can you effectively execute? And then whatever doesn't work, you try something else. It's just that, you know, we've done it on the playground. You know, we go there, we do our little stuff with the camps and clinics, but we go out and practice it as kids, right? We would go out there on the playground and test it out and be like, oh, I'm going to try this move. I'm going to try this dunk. I'm going to try this dribble. Not on YouTube and just, I'm like, you do 800 dribbles, but I said, I've never seen you dribble above an opponent in the game. So why are you doing 20 dribbles? You know, I said, and then after that, the idea is model somebody. Once they get that, now this kid is scoring and doing all kinds of things. And I said, personality has nothing to do with it. Now here's where the personality works. I said, since you understand their assessment, understand this. This person is more reserved. Don't come at them with, great job, Timmy. You're going to scare them. You're going to, you know, because here's the thing. That's an act. They are acting outgoing because in their environment, they believe that's what they need to be successful. Mm-hmm. I said, I want you to hit them at the core level. This particular personality profile is they're reserved, and they have a blue, and they have an S, and they have a C. Very interesting. So I said, look, give them the best practices, give them the video analysis, because that's going to be the kid that's going to sit in the film room. Give them someone that's maybe a little bit more energetic with them, but also maybe a little reserved to talk to them, you know, augment it, whether you need two people or whatnot, because you and I both know, how do you improve in anything? In soccer, Ronaldo, he stays after practice. Beckham stays after practice. No, what do these clown coaches do? They go in there, they run a seminar. These kids don't have enough touches on the ball. They don't do no small-sided games. The coaches spent 80 minutes talking. They haven't done anything. The level is garbage. They're not even going 80%, let alone 90% in practice. And then the kid doesn't even understand what to do. And the problem is, you see people that are making millions of dollars staying after practice, looking at film, not eating cheeseburgers every 3 days, you know, like, and you've got this kid who doesn't even watch the dang sport. He's going to be your star? No, he's not your Huckleberry, you know. So it's not personality. It is drive and determination. If that kid wants it, you know, whether they're a defender or whatnot, because we see it all the time. 6'3" defender won't even have the dang ball. What in the world's going on? And a 5'8" striker wins the ball over him. And you're like, what in the world is going on? You know, and whether it's Division I, had a conversation with Division I college coach. He's like, what? He said, where are the rugged athletes at? He's like, what the heck's going on? Like, I got this guy 6'3", 190 pounds. He's not physical. you know, so what I'm saying is, what we look at is, we don't care who's there. If they are aggressively going at it, that's why, you know, you look at the keep it on deck or whatnot. The players, what we do and what I've learned from the Europeans is, the first thing a lot of them do is they just throw a ball out, like, unless they got film on you or something. But to really kind of see you, what they do besides a friendly is they just throw the ball out and watch the kids play, because there are two things. The kids are going to naturally line up where they're most comfortable. Now, that could either be because that's what they understand, or that's just where they're at. You know, like, I can't beat him, so I'm going to line up here. Now, besides that, the person that's getting after the ball, making the challenges and all those individual things you're looking for in that position, now that you can take that and you start with them first, because everyone else that is kind of relegated themselves, they become your second and third tier folks, you know. So you know, it's that kind of long about way, but that's what at the higher level we talk about and we do to get that serious development, because, you know, at that point, you know, any coach that doesn't understand, look, the academy is made for one reason. The true academy is, we're here to develop you. We're taking a loss, and we want to sell you for millions. There is no other discussion.
Right. Europe, of
you
course.
know,
We're talking about Europe here. So
yeah,
that's not happening in the States.
yes.
Problem with the
Right.
States. I'm not going to get into that today. But
yeah, well,
But let me just throw something at you though. Push back a little. I don't know if it's pushing back.
Yeah.
It's not so much pushing back. I don't
No,
disagree
no,
with
please,
what you
please.
just said. But what I will say though is, and this is just Phil Dark's theory here. This is like bonus coverage here, folks. I this hasn't been published
Oh
any,
yeah.
so this is hasn't been. There's no case studies on it. There's no anything except my watching a lot of soccer and seeing and meeting a lot of
Yes.
soccer players and watching my kids in their different positions. Okay, so I'm just gonna say I agree with you. That any player, any personality can play any position, and your mentors help a ton, and you need to be mentored because we are
Right.
a blend of all personalities, and we can learn other personalities, and we can do
Right.
different things in that regard. But what I will say, and I think this is absolutely the case, certain personalities are made for certain positions. And as I said that about the nine, about the strikers, if you're talking about a kind of a pure nine striker, typically an I or a D personality that would be the natural born striker, as they said. As I said, I joke around. I said it took me 5 kids to have a pure striker. And he is my mini me, my ID outgoing personality that just wants to go after it, have fun, get results, wants to focus on them, wants the attention, wants the glory, wants all that. Because what does that lend to, right? That lends to going to the
Right.
ball, going, get ball, see goal, go goal, score a goal, right? That's what
Right.
an S or a C personality, as you learn what the disc is, would probably struggle with that because they don't want the tension on themselves. They wouldn't say, "Oh, that's not the best way to do it" from the C perspective because you got,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
got to work through this, you got to do that. But the D especially would be like Ibrahimovic is a good example of that. He is a D personality. Okay, he's a guy, and if you look back at Eric Cantona, he was probably an I or a D, just the way he celebrated, collar flipped up, right? You see these guys who are the pure strikers. Now, Messi, I would say, is kind of a false nine, more of a 10. That would be a little
Yes.
different from that, right? So he's not your, but he does it because he knows he's the best at that, and he knows he can beat the guy, and he knows he can score, but it's more team focused, right? So
Hmm.
wingers, I
Hmm.
think, would probably be more eyes because they're more creative and they are able to use their creativity on the wings. So again, it's not perfect science and it's not a proven theory,
Oh
but
no.
I'm just saying,
Right.
like natural born, if you're talking natural
Oh,
born where you don't have to mentor as much, but they just kind of go there without thinking. And I look at
I.
like six, the
Yeah.
whole mid would be more of your reserved personalities. They don't need the limelight. They don't want the limelight, but if they see an opening, they'll take it and hit that shot. Right. But for the most part, they want to sit back, look at the field, study the field, be students of the game, be that quarterback that can put that ball through. And if they never get, Michael Carrick is a perfect example of that. I met Michael Carrick and he said maybe 4 words.
Mm.
He was very reserved, very much a student. He's a guy, and he makes a great coach on certain parts of that now with sitting on the bench there with Solskjaer to be able to tell him those things because he's studying it all the time. And the thing about
Right.
Carrick was he didn't score a lot of goals. He was a guy that if you weren't
Right.
a United fan, you didn't know Michael Carrick, except that when he wasn't in
Right.
the game, they only won 35% of the game when he wasn't in that game, right? Because he was kind of the glue
Yes.
holding together. But that's kind of going, again, I don't want to go through each, but you kind of get the idea, the kind of
Oh
wing,
no, no, no. I love it.
right? You need kind of a mix of
So,
the reserved and the outgoing on the wing backs, or else they'd be
oh,
forward. I would guess to say Marcelo on Real Madrid. If I were to give him an assessment, I'd guess he's a high I, just the way he plays.
hmm.
What
Hmm.
does he not do
Hmm.
a lot of in a game?
Yeah.
Play a lot of defense, right? Like he
Right.
is
Right. Right.
phenomenal
Well,
attacking back, but you wouldn't pick
yeah.
him if you needed to lock down a right winger, right? So
So
anyway, that's my
I.
Bill Dark
Yeah.
theory. What do you think?
Yeah. No, no, no. I love what you said. So here's what's so interesting about that. At the upper level where results matter, if you're not getting results, think about it. Coaches, if they haven't won 5 games, they're probably out.
Yeah.
If the player, they may have 5 to 15 minutes. That's why I say the disc is an excellent. So here's how I'm helping a lot of the European and even some of the American ones. But here's what the Europeans are what we're working with. They don't have time for all that, because here's the thing: when you lose up there, right, it matters. And if you're talking about relegation, there's no playing it safe and whatnot. And, it's not just, oh, we didn't make the playoffs. That's here's where they've come from. The thing is, because I agree with you, you're right. Yeah, the normal, natural and whatnot and all of that definitely has its application. But here's the issue. If you can't win because Carrick isn't there, if you like, honestly, I tell a lot of the Europeans, I'm like, look, yeah, the managers are great, but if you can't play at that level and you need the gaffer, you're an idiot. You got the wrong person. I said I assure you, the professional teams that I'm on, you're gone, because the thing is, I can bring a 16-year-old in who just listens. And I don't need them to be a perfect striker. Can you affect the game? Because here's what I'd say with like Marcelo and all of them. The difference is this: why have they not gotten the results when Ronaldo left? Because leadership. It goes back to all of that is fancy, but here's what people don't understand. And when I talk with a lot of the people that matter, like they have millions of dollars on the line or thousands of dollars, whatever, it's their own savings or whatnot. And I said, look, but here's what you have to understand. I said, first off, with leadership, any of them can work. And I hate to say that, but like what we've learned is, look, any leadership style can work. Don't be fooled. Now, we're not saying some are better than others, but a toxic one can work. The pander one, the stern, or the good leader. Now, the issue is you want to have the good leader, but can any of them work? Yes, unfortunately, because the key is you got to have a system where you pay a price if you don't perform. And the difference is when you have the person to your left and right pushing you, it makes you better. So the issue is most of these folks, and what we have issues with is that they've never been taught to win. The best leadership documentary I've seen is The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. You've heard a lot about it, but I'll prove the point through something like this. When people ask Kobe Bryant or who's the best, Kobe or Jordan, Kobe himself said, that's a stupid question. Don't compare us. I went to Michael Jordan to be mentored.
Right.
And there's plenty of people. Look, I'm from Cleveland, but I will tell you, and some people will say different, but I'm like, the individual that came from Cleveland is not the best in the world. I'm just looking at simple leadership. I'm looking at are these things that leaders do?
That's right.
They're not. Kobe, one of the best in the world, said no. When I needed to improve, I went to Goat Mountain. Michael Jordan mentored him just as much as Ronaldinho mentored Messi. People don't know that.
Yeah.
The fact that, so when we go to all of that and whatnot, like you were saying, I'm like, no, you're right. But here's what I'm helping the Europeans and other people with this. I'm saying, look, guys, I said, here's my issue with what you're doing. You're banking your season, bonuses and all kind of stuff. You're leaving money on the table. If you have a 16-year-old Neymar, I said, do you understand you have a 16-year-old Neymar? You have a teenager. He's worried about his girlfriend, this, that. So why don't you bring in an older American or an older player that helps shore up your locker room?
That's right.
Because if Carrick was as quality as they say, he should be able to lead on the sideline or on the field. Ronaldo did. He helped Portugal win that game, right? You've seen it. And when he left Real Madrid, you saw it. And it's like, and so we talked about these different things. We said, how is Zidane, who wasn't necessarily like he failed in the reserves and whatnot, people were killing his teams. Why did he win with Real Madrid? There was two things. We're like, well, why didn't Rafa win? So we said, well, it may have been just player personalities. When they looked at Zidane, as the coach, the mentor. I'm going to do what he says because I respect him. Whereas when Rafa said, you need to fix this, they're like, you know what, your mother. You know what I mean? So you're right with the players and whatnot. Absolutely. But here is the thing, though. What I was telling them is this. I said, look, but the individuals have to take ownership and it has to be leadership. It can't be, okay, we lost a goal and the heads are down. It can't be if Ronaldo's there, we can win and we change if he's not there. You need the people that I don't give a dang if he's there, he's not there, we're going to win. And I'm going to put my foot in your behind, or what. And that's what Jordan did, because Jordan went to these different people and he said, wait a minute, you're not champions. He said, you were on the bench. You were third or fourth string. What are you talking about? You don't know nothing about winning. Get out of my face. And that's what a leader would do. And now his personality style, it definitely fits the mold of what you're saying. But what I was trying to help those guys understand was this. I said, look, you got to understand, like, so in an elite military or whatever, I said, when you see the best teams, you'll see it where even the quietest person won't let you let down the legacy.
Absolutely.
You know, like
Sure.
when we lost our World Cup bid, I loved it when the veteran, I can't remember, you sent it to me, I can't remember his name, and he said, what? You know, I love this guy. I can't remember his name. He played for Bolton, I think was the last one. He's a commentator. Can't
Oh,
remember his name, but yeah, but he was, but so what you need is this. It's the accountability. It is, I'm not letting Phil down. I don't care about the result. Dang that. I'm not letting my buddy Phil down
right.
if I'm on the field. And Phil is going to help me do better. And even Timmy, who I hate and would punch in the face if I could legally get away with it, right? Because our true feelings and emotions come out during the game. I've had a conversation with a lot of people with that where I'm like, wait, what do you mean don't tell them to be positive and don't yell? I said, first off, take the leadership example for what it is. That's how he truly feels about these people around him. So don't hide from it. Let's talk about it, because you think you're handling it as a coach, and he clearly tells you, John, you never make the run when I cross it into the box. You are lazy winger. You never defend. Well, what do you think happens in Europe when I find out that this guy's being paid $3,000 a week or a month? Mm-hmm. And I'm working you know what I mean? Like, you know, so you're right. So that's why I tell them, get away from this person is naturally for that in character, because I said, when you have a person like yourself, think about it, Phil, how many of those natural leaders did you beat out when you were playing? Mm-hmm. How many folks does Amanda just get rid of because, yeah, they got great talent, but their character is garbage and they will never survive. You know, so yes, you're right. But where the Europeans and other folks are at, where money's on the line, what happens? Okay, you're right. You have that person and they're great. Well, what happens at the upper level? If you're that good, I'm going to buy you. Mm-hmm. So now what are you going to do? You're going to tank your season, maybe lose your job and lose bonuses because you're waiting, or you're going to do like, you know, Ohio State, Alabama. Hey, next man up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yes, you're right, but where they're at is they've got to get that.
It's got to be a both and, right? I think you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as we know, if you're doing something that's out of your natural kind of your lane,
yep,
you will
have to adjust
at some point, right? You have to adjust, and you burn out at some point, right? Most likely. So
well, no, I don't think so, because it depends on your motivation. Because I've seen plenty of like pilots. They get on the technical because they get so much satisfaction out of it, but it's not their wheelhouse. So like, they're like, look, this is not my thing, but I love this. And that's why I was saying that hunger and that passion. If you can find a way, like now, let me back up. So I deal with a lot of aftermarket folks, unsigned folks, people that are restarting their careers. So this is what I have to be good at. I have to, like, when people come to me, they're like, look, this guy was in the military. He got drafted. He was great at U16, but, you know, in Europe, he's 18, 19. He's like grand old man. Yeah. He's not grand old man. The problem is ageism, you know? And I'm like, look, I said, well, why don't you do this? Here's how you can restart it. Here's how we'll help you, you know, in an aftermarket sort of way, get him up to where he needs to. So yeah, you're right. But what it does is with disc and video analysis and all those other things, you can help that person pick a new position, be effective in another way, because they may have to step up, you know, in the FA Cup or whatever. They may have to, you know, the first person sold, the other person's on loan, or, you know, called up to national duty or injured. And now all of a sudden you're dealing with your third, fourth, fifth string. Mm-hmm. Look at Klopp. Absolutely. You know, and Klopp's philosophy is, look, if you won't do what I need you to do, we got to find something else for you to do. He doesn't even deal with it. He doesn't care about personality. You know, he's like, you know, because at that level,
anybody can do. I mean, like we said, there is, you know, again, it's not perfect science.
Now they got to make adjustments.
There's it's an art in the midst of science, as with anything else, you know. But if you have a
correct, absolutely,
who is not going to be able to run miles and miles and miles, you're not going to put him at center mid, right? You're just not going to do
it. And unless you adjust your techniques. Well, sometimes they're doing that, you know,
plays where they're
maybe he's box to box.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is if
full
true box to box center mid, you're going to struggle
Right.
if you're not a long distance guy. It just is, because I am not a long distance guy,
Exactly.
and I last about 3.5 minutes
Right.
in center mid. So
Right.
that's the
Right.
reality, right?
Right.
So, but I can play striker all day long because I can make the runs, I can do that, then I can take a breath, right? And so you
Yep.
just need to know
Yep.
your personnel, and I think that personality is underestimated in that. That's all I'm saying here. And
Oh,
I
absolutely.
and I
Oh,
think
no, absolutely.
that, as you said, when you get good mentors in there, when you get people coming in behind them and training them
Hmm.
up to be, hey, you know what? Here's the reality of it. As you talked about with pilots, if you have all that technical and they're a high I personality, okay,
Yeah.
details may not be their thing at that point, but I'm a high I
Right.
personality who was in a law firm for 8 years. Okay, you need to
Yeah,
be
and you did.
detail oriented. Now, I had to find a way to make it fun. I didn't realize that's
Yes.
what I was doing, but that's what pilots have
Yes.
to do too. They have to figure out a way to make that fun, or else they won't be able
Right.
to last in that. So they get, okay, I'm going to geek
Right.
out on this and I'm just going to have a blast with this. Right. And that's the way it is.
Right. Right.
Same way, if you're kind of a laissez-faire, kind of laid back personality, loves the status quo, and they put you at striker, you got to figure out a way within yours. Usually what they'll
Yes.
do is say, okay, I'm fast and I can shoot. And so the best I can be for my team is to be able to score goals. So that's what I'm going to do right
Yes.
now. It's a very
Yes.
different
Or
motivation
create assists.
from right, or
Hmm.
create assists. It's a very different motivation from that
Hmm.
ID, that
Yes.
Zlatan Ibrahimovic guy who really just wants to
Right.
get a bunch of goals on his stat sheet. That's his driver.
Hmm.
S will be, and Messi's probably more of an S if I had to guess. I could be wrong on that, but that's a guy who's saying, okay, the best for my team is for me to do this, and I'm going to do it, and I'm just
Right.
make people look silly because that's going to make my team better. And neither is
Right.
wrong, neither is bad. Both
Right.
are great,
Right.
and both teams need both, right? And so,
Yeah.
but for coaches to understand that and understand the motivation and understand the driver is
Yeah.
absolutely critical. And so, any
Yeah.
last thoughts on that before we hit the last couple questions that we got to tie this up, but
Man.
last
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, and I think that's very very good what you're saying, because I totally agree, and all I was getting at was, when you're mentored by the different players, what you'll see is that they will figure out how to make it worth their while. They will figure out, and that's the point of it, and that's what I mean by getting the most out of them. Because I totally agree with you. Because what people don't understand is this: it only takes a couple good trades or a couple bad trades to mess up the chemistry in your locker room. And if you were looking for, your star player, I've seen plenty of teams go down in the national, state, let alone European competitions, because, they were a great striker. But what happened when Johnny just wasn't hitting the net? Well, did he pout and didn't know leadership and it's everybody's fault? And now everybody's like, oh, now we're really, you don't see Messi and those guys doing that. They say, hey, and that's what I was saying. The thing is you're right, because as an insurance policy, you better know how to very rapidly get the reserves and getting those academy and third, fourth, fifth, sixth, eighth string people going, because once you win a national title, whatnot, now people want to poach. But at the bigger level, we want to buy your players.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, but I agree.
Oh,
Yeah.
and we've gone a lot longer than I thought we were going to go right now. Actually, we've talked for hours. That's a
Oh,
lie.
yeah. Well, we've been planning. Yeah, we've been planning this one. So this is more kind of
Go
two.
on for hours and hours if we wanted to, but we know that is not how this works. So I have a couple last questions I want to throw at you.
Yeah.
I've thrown to others, and I know that you do these things. But so really, how have you used the lessons that you've learned directly from the game of soccer in your
Yeah.
ship, in your marriage, your parenting, really outside the football pitch? How have you used those lessons from
Yeah.
directly from the game of soccer?
Yeah. Well, everything applies. So what I love with what you're talking about, and I forgot to mention. So the last book I had was Jeff Olson, The Slight Edge. One thing I'll tell you is this. So like, here's one thing I just very quickly, Mastering the Slight Edge, Chapter 8. So it was a neat little quote. It was this definition, yet can be instantly recognized. It comes in many variations, yet follows certain unchanged laws. What I love about this is also talks about the trouble is that we have a few, if any, maps to guide us on the journey, or even to show us how to find the path. The modern world, in fact, can be viewed as a prodigious conspiracy against mastery. We're continually bombarded with promises of immediate gratification, instant success, and fast temporary relief, all of which lead in exactly the wrong direction. George Leonard on mastery, Slight Edge, Jeff Olson, and also I would tell people to, read Phil's book on a different subject, but on the orphan, that there was a lot of leadership lessons there. So how I've used it is this. So we forget that sport was made basically to defend against. It's basically to prepare you for something. Some people would say, hey, it prepares you for war. Some would say, well, it's diplomacy. Like, it's very good when you watch different national teams able to battle it on the field and leave it on the field and, inspire and whatnot, as opposed to those countries going to war. One thing that I've learned is this: mentorship is effective. Learning yourself. It's a great place where you can do challenges and improve yourself. So for me, I'm simply just using soccer. And honestly, the English do call it soccer also, but you just have to go back more historical. So they call it both, depending on where you're at in that area. But I use football just as a vehicle to help disenfranchised people or folks who want to accomplish their goals and dreams. I help them use as a vehicle to do that. And all the lessons are the same, because here's the thing: at the end of the day, you have a life. And if your level is not up there, well, then you're going to do everything you can to improve your level and compete wherever you're comfortable. So the idea is this: if you're playing non-league, well, you're still developing, you're still playing, but you also have a job, a wife, a husband, whatever, so you still have all of those things, kids. So you're dealing with bosses. Maybe you got investments, maybe you have bills. So all of those experiences apply, and it's more like an overlay just over your situation. So what I've done is this: to be the best person that I can be and be most effective, I use the DISC to make sure that I'm able to really understand myself, and then look at where the other person is at, and then make the adjustments, because I want them to get their goals. I don't want us to just sit there and we had a good talk, and then plus, I don't take for granted that we're not here forever. Like, I've seen people, they don't understand mentorship. I love the mentorship aspect of this game, because the folks that have mentored and they have the drive and determination, I've seen them 95% of the time crush the kid with talent. Because right now, most of my players that I'm working with outside of the academy and all that are in the pipeline, the 95% of the players that I'm working with are the ones that, they were all American. They were everything back then. Mm-hmm. They're nobody now. Not they're not nobody, but it's just they didn't get there, and whether it was because they didn't develop or whatever or however, what I've seen a lot of it is they didn't have the right mentorship. Because it's not what you know, it is who you know. Because you and I both know, look, I can get you over to England, but they're going to ask two things. I'm worried about two things. One, they're going to be worried about your level. And two, I'll be worried about my reputation. Because if you go over there and you're garbage, well, now I've liquidated the other 20,000 kids I could recommend, because Phil's not picking up my phone no more. He'd be like, well, Davis, oh, Lord. Yeah, didn't he send us that guy that kicked himself in the face? Yeah, no, we'll call him back, and in a competitive market, so that's what I've learned and applied. And what's nice is the relationships are enriched. Our folks are getting their goals. Our investors are happy. I mean, because I'm able to talk to them and address their fears and concerns. And it's not this, most folks where I come from, they've been burned. So they know if they put their money with me, they're like, oh, we get the business plan. We see the results. Okay, hey, I'm a little nervous about this, and this. How can we address it? And we can work with it as a team. And then at the other end, I'm happy that we're able to save lives. Like right now, the different things we're working with orphan care, we're able to touch lives in different countries, but also even the people that are here that may be a dual citizen. Like I said, we're having a lot of, just success there in Africa and other places. We're working on a South London program, and that's what I'm excited about. So basically, I've taken how your grandmother raised you. That's all we need to do. That's all they're talking about on Sunday or whatnot. That's all your coach wants, your teacher. Do your best. Learn, so all those lessons, has really enriched my life and has allowed me to enrich other people's life, whether it's financially, whether it's physically, mentally, whatever we're working on and what they get out of it. So that's what I've applied. But DISC has been the best thing that has allowed me to do that. I know it's kind of out there in the ether, but that matters because the results come when you have your chi right, if you will. You know what I mean? If you're just distracted or whatnot, you're not going to get results. You're not going to get the maximum effectiveness out of anything because think about it. You're doing it alone and you're one person. How effective can you be? Because life is not a fair fight. It is about my team versus your team. And if you're an individual, you're going to lose. You're not going to beat me. Like how can you? You're one person. It doesn't work.
Yeah, there was a lot in there. I think the things that I pulled out of
Yeah.
that you just said was like really mentorship, and I think that the mentorship that happens in the soccer teams. Something you said
Yeah.
earlier reminded me of Ted Lasso. Have you seen Ted Lasso on Apple TV? Have you seen that?
Yes. I
Yeah,
love
it
it. I
reminded me.
love
You're talking about the
it.
older guy in the locker room, right? Roy Kent there in the locker room coming in to be able to, and Ted Lasso saw that. I mean, the leadership lessons in that show are phenomenal, but to see Ted Lasso,
Yes.
and that's the guy, that's the one. And that's the guy that you're talking about, that one, that older guy
Yes.
who can come in and walk alongside. And that mentorship is critical in
Yes.
life as well, in the lives of our children, in the lives of our family, in the lives of
Yes.
in business, to be able to have that with your, great leaders will raise up their successor as they're leading, right? Those are all principles that you're
Hmm.
talking about there, right? And then just the
Yes.
principle of it's not what you know, it's who you know. I mean, and that in the credibility, like you talked about
Yes.
there, the importance of when you refer somebody, you're putting your credibility on the line. And so I'm going to tell you on both
Yep.
sides of it, first of all, if you're referring somebody, make sure you believe in them and make sure it's
Oh man.
legitimate and not just because you've known them and they're your cousin's friend or whatever. Like you better know them and you better, I don't refer anyone to anyone unless I know them and I know not only
Hmm.
are they a great player, but do they have great character because they will represent you and you represent them as well, right? So if they don't respect you, Toriano, it's not going to mean a whole lot
Yep.
when you say this is a great kid, right? But if they respect you and you say this is not only a great kid, yeah, he's a really, really good player, but this is a kid you want on your team because he's got character that will
Yes.
actually impact others. And if you say it and they respect you, that's going to go a long way, right? But the
Yes.
one kid you send who you say has great character, and then they go off and they do things like, I'm
Boy.
not gonna name any names, but a couple of little English boys in
Yeah.
Iceland,
Yeah. You.
they do
Yeah.
stuff like that.
You're getting a phone call.
Then you're saying, what? Did you know that? And you go, well, they can't put it all on you. But at the same time, like, were there any warning signs that you knew about? And even if there weren't, it affects your
Yes.
credibility and it puts a ding and you get a little black mark and maybe they'll give you another shot. But if it might be two
Yep.
strikes, you're out, right?
Yep.
Not even be three. So
Yep.
anyway, that's
Yep.
what I kind of got there. And I tell you what, man, those principles, if you didn't write those down, write them down and if you don't already know them, learn what we're talking about because those two things there are critical. And I can tell you that from coaching soccer. I can tell you that from being in a law firm. I can tell you that from running a nonprofit.
Hmm.
I can tell you that from being a parent, being involved in all kinds of different organizations. I don't care what you're doing. Those principles apply. Absolutely. 100%. So I'm glad that you talked about those couple things. So with that, we're going to call this another show. I just want to thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for taking the time to do this, Toriano. Thank you for your friendship and work that we're doing together. Folks out there, if again, we'll have it in the show notes, how to get a hold of Toriano. So if you missed it at the beginning of the episode, we'll put that in the show notes there so you won't miss it. We'll have the other things that he's talked about. We'll have some information on DISC if you want to get more of that. If you want to get able to go through the training and have us coach you, just reach out to us and we'll love to be able to do that with you, whether you're a individual with an organization or you're a coach of a team, college, pro, youth, whatever level. If you're saying, hey, I want to use this to help my family, drop me an email, Phil at howsoccerexplainsleadership.com. You can connect with Toriano as well. If you're on the East Coast, you might want to do it. If you want to be, if someday we're able to meet in person again, then actually in California, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but where you're at out there on the
It'll
East
happen.
Coast, I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
just kidding. It was a joke, but I know it's on audio. I'm glad you said that because sometimes it's hard to know jokes on audio, but I
Oh
will
yeah.
say, thank you Toriano, thank you for all that you're doing. So I just really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. And yeah, and I didn't. It's tough where I'm at because when I'm dealing with everything from recreational, low level, kid at the Boys and Girls Club, all the way up to the investor, top leagues. So, I just be patient with the information. We definitely will talk more. I think you can definitely pull some items out of it. And I tell you, but the Phil's a great resource, and anything that I can do to help Phil or anybody out there, let's have a chat. Thank you.
All right. So again, thank you, Toriano. Thank you, folks, for this download. We went a bit longer than expected, so I will not take any more of your time today. I just want to thank you for this download. Thank you for being a part of this conversation, and I do hope that you take everything that you're learning on this show and you're using it to help you be a better leader, for you to help you to really understand how the beautiful game does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.